I just want to apologise ahead of time before I get into this. The east coast of Australia is currently suffering through a pretty severe high wind weather event, if you can call it that. So I can't go outside. So instead, I'm recording this. And yeah, if you hear glass shatter or a tree go through a wall, I apologise. So on platforms where I'm quite a bit more successful, a lot of people, when I talk about politics, ask me what's the Australian perspective on things, or like what's the outside perspective looking in. Do people everywhere think American politics is as over the top as people feel when they're living it? And I can say, absolutely yes. That is felt internationally, and one of the observations I tend to make as an outsider looking in is the fact that the Republican Party has had a transformation over the last 20 years or so that has been absolutely incredible to witness. The Republican Party really makes me question what conservatism is, because my understanding, as someone who's Australian and also a British citizen, looking at those political systems, when I think of conservatism, I think of conserving. At least how I look at it, the dynamic that exists in most like Western free market democracies is this, and this is a pretty simplistic way to look at it. You have a conservative side of politics that tends to dominate and be like the party of the norm, as it were. They're who are in power most of the time. And their approach to politics is that they're very skeptical of change. They think that the society as it exists is good, and that changes that do occur need to happen slowly, if at all. And then, of course, you have a progressive opposition to that is occasionally in power, and their role is basically to institute change when the Conservative Party becomes far too stagnant. So you'll see normally when, I think in both the UK and Australia's case, when the Labour Party, the main left-wing party, comes to power, it's to institute some sort of change, get some energy back into politics. They do their best, but at a certain point, people start to feel, okay, whatever progress was required has been made, and it's time for us to go back to the default. And then the conservative wing of politics comes back in with a sort of like revitalized energy for a couple of terms before they become decrepit and need to be reminded of what they are again. I don't know if the United States has ever like cleanly fit into that. It's a very different political system, of course, from a parliamentary model, but it's fascinating to me that at least today, I'm 100% certain that the United States political scene does not follow that trend in the slightest. One of the core tenets of conservatism, as I understand it in like most of the Western world, is that conservatives tend to love tradition and like the continuation of that tradition, the country that they live in. They are incredibly proud of it in almost every aspect, and they want to preserve it as it exists because they appreciate and cherish and want to conserve that system. I don't think Republicans like America anymore. Now, that is painting with a very, very broad brush, and that's not what I want to do, but I feel like I kind of have to even get through this point, is that I feel like right-wing people in America suffered some sort of grievance in the late 2000s, early 2010s, that they've just never gotten over. And that has defined their political positioning and attitudes ever since. And ever since, it's just felt like conservative politics in America has just been mad. And I don't mean like insane, I mean like furious, angry, genuinely upset with the state of America. I mean, like, take a look at their party slogan, Make America Great Again. The implication being that something has been lost and that we need to go back and do something radical and change seemingly everything. Now, there are plenty of theories as to why this sort of grievance politics took off. Maybe it was the election of Obama. I'm all leaning towards something like the global financial crisis of 2008 and like a massive blow to the reputation of capitalism amongst people who just loved cheering it as the greatest system ever and then realized how much they could be hurt by it. Regardless of why it changed, it has. And I'm just astounded by it because in what world is the party of NATO expansion and fighting the Russians at every turn, the Democrats? And how is it the conservative Republican Party that seems to be unable to deliver a single concise message on supporting America's longest standing allies and fighting who has always been the Russians, the seemingly like original enemy of the 20th century for them post World War II? How have the Democrats seemingly become the party of supporting that? The Democratic Party of the 1960s that tore itself apart over the Vietnam War and support for it is now the party of war against Russian expansionism. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm just saying that is a fact, that they are the party that is much more unified on this traditional Reagan-esque approach to foreign policy. I have this pet theory that like Democrats have seized that part of like the political spectrum to be like more like traditionally like Reagan-esque in foreign policy and just like being a lot more like flag wavy that I've touched on before, how much they've shifted since 2016 to sort of take that like that mantra of like USA, USA, this is the greatest country in the world, while Republicans really denigrate what America has become. And I feel like the Democrats have done that because if you have both sides of the political spectrum, left and right wing, both detesting the state of a country and wanting immense change, that country is probably going to tear itself apart. In a political environment where Republicans want immense change, immense reform, and just like a giant societal shift, the Democrats have had to become something else to prevent just complete political chaos. And I don't know where it goes from here, but I'm sure it's going to be interesting to watch.